The snow began to fall before dawn, thick and silent, muffling the sounds of war. In the frozen forests of Belgium and Luxembourg, American soldiers slept in foxholes, believing the enemy was beaten. They were wrong. On December 16, 1944, the quiet shattered. Artillery thundered through the Ardennes, German tanks roared out of the mist, and in a single, dreaded moment, World War II in Europe changed course. What followed would become the largest and bloodiest battle ever fought by the United States Army, the Battle of the Bulge. By late 1944, the Allies believed victory in Europe was only months away. Paris had been liberated. Brussels was free. American, British, and Canadian armies were pushing steadily toward Germany's western border. The German army, battered and retreating, seemed incapable of major resistance. Allied commanders viewed the Ardennes forest, a rugged region of dense woods and narrow roads, as a quiet sector. So they stationed there what they thought were safe units. Inexperienced replacements, battered divisions pulled back to rest, and soldiers recovering from earlier battles. But across the front lines, in the shadows of the Reich, Adolf Hitler was planning something desperate and deadly. Hitler knew Germany was losing. On the Eastern Front, Soviet armies were closing in relentlessly. In the West, Allied air power dominated the skies. Yet Hitler believed one bold strike could still change everything. His plan was audacious. Launch a massive surprise attack, smash through the thinly held American lines, cross the Meuse River, and capture the vital port of Antwerp. If successful, the Allied armies would be split in two. The British and Canadians would be cut off in the north, the Americans isolated in the south. Hitler hoped this would force the Western Allies to negotiate a peace, allowing him to turn fully against the Soviets. To make it happen, secrecy was everything. German troops moved only at night. Radio silence was enforced. Many commanders were kept in the dark. The operation was given a chilling name: Watch on the Rhine. At 5:30 a.m., German artillery erupted along an 85-mile front. The shelling was sudden and overwhelming. American positions were obliterated. Telephone lines were severed. Units were cut off and isolated almost instantly. Then came the infantry veteran German soldiers, many hardened by years of brutal combat, and behind them, the panzers. The attack achieved total surprise. In places like La Cime Gap and the Schnee Eifel, American units were surrounded. Entire regiments were captured, roads clogged with refugees, retreating soldiers, and shattered vehicles. Within days, the German advance carved a deep bulge into the Allied front lines, giving the battle its name. The weather worked in Germany's favor. Heavy cloud-covered grounded Allied aircraft, blinding the Allies to German movements and preventing air support. American commanders struggled to understand what was happening. Reports were contradictory. Communications were chaotic. Yet amid the confusion, acts of courage began to define the battle. At the crossroads town of Bastogne, the 101st Airborne Division, along with elements of the 10th Armored Division, was rushed in to block the German advance. They arrived just in time. Bastogne was critical. 7 major roads converged there. If it fell, German armor could surge westward unchecked. By December 20th, Bastogne was completely surrounded. The defenders were low on ammunition. Medical supplies were scarce. The wounded lay freezing in makeshift aid stations. Snow fell relentlessly, and temperatures plunged well below freezing. Then the Germans sent an ultimatum: surrender or be annihilated. The American response was legendary. General Anthony McAuliffe's reply was just one word: Nazi. All across the Ardennes, similar stories unfolded. At St. Vith, American forces delayed the German timetable, throwing Hitler's carefully planned schedule into chaos. Small units fought desperate delaying actions, blowing bridges, ambushing tanks, and holding roadblocks against overwhelming odds. German fuel shortages became critical. Hitler's plan relied on capturing Allied fuel depots, but many were destroyed before the Germans could reach them. In one notorious incident, near Montmédy, troops massacred surrendered American prisoners, fueling rage and resolve among U.S. soldiers who now understood the stakes. The battle was no longer just about ground. It was about survival. As the German offensive surged, Supreme Allied Commander Dwight D. Eisenhower faced a crisis. The front was bent, but not broken. Eisenhower made a bold decision. Turn General George S. Patton's Third Army, who's fighting in the south, northward toward Bastogne. Patton had already anticipated the move. In a stunning feat of logistics and leadership, his army pivoted nearly 90 degrees in brutal winter conditions. On December 26th, Patton's lead elements broke through to Bastogne, ending the siege. The defenders, exhausted, frost-bitten, but unbroken, were finally relieved. On December 23rd, the weather cleared. For the first time since the offensive began, Allied aircraft filled the sky. Fighter bombers struck German columns, supply lines, and exposed tanks. Transport planes dropped vital supplies to encircled units. The balance of power shifted dramatically. German losses mounted. Vehicles were abandoned in the snow. What had begun as a lightning strike became a grinding retreat. By January 1945, the German offensive had stalled completely. American and British forces counterattacked from the north and south, squeezing the Bulge shut. The fighting was brutal. Villages changed hands repeatedly. Forests were shattered by artillery. Soldiers froze in their positions. By January 25th, the front lines were restored to nearly their original positions. The Battle of the Bulge was over. In the silent forests of the Ardennes, the snow has long since melted. But beneath the trees and quiet roads lies the memory of a battle that tested the limits of courage and resolve. The Battle of the Bulge was not just a clash of armies. It was a crucible. And in that crucible, history was forged in ice, fire, and blood. If stories like this matter to you, stories of sacrifice, endurance, and moments that shaped the world, then help keep them alive. Subscribe to War Stories Archive, where we uncover the battles history remembers. And tell us in the comments, which war, which battle, which forgotten front should we tell next? Because as long as these stories are remembered, those who lived them are never truly gone.